So this is the meeting of the steering committee for the Northwest Water Treatment Facility. Got a few things to go over today. Well, there we go, okay. So three main things we want to accomplish today is give you an update on the project, and then we have some questions, some input we're looking for on our admin lab building and on some aesthetics going forward.
Hey, Bill, before you get too far along, can you let everybody know who's here online and in the room? People online know who's here too. Okay.
So I guess I'll say it because I think it's just the mics at the table. So I was trying to open. How come I can't open that up?
Can everybody online hear us okay? I hope.
I can hear you.
Yes.
Good.
I can hear you, yes.
Great.
Okay. So then here in the room, we got Alan King, Director of Public Works and Utilities, Dave Kinchin with Wichita Water Partners, Mark Dolacek with Garver, Brian Meyer with Wichita Water Partners, Dakota Zimmerman with Garver, Ron Coker with Wichita Water Partners, Don Henry, Assistant Director of Public Works and Utilities, Vice Mayor Johnson, and Councilmember Fry. Online, let's see who we do have online. So then, online, Chris Bohm, Jessica Byers with Garver, Joni Chamberlain with Public Works and Utilities, Don Sherman with Evergy, Penny Feist with Public Works and Utilities, Julianne Coleman with Public Works and Utilities, Kathy Sexton from the City of Derby, Megan Lovely, and Dante Martin with the City of Wichita.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay, so we got the three general area things that we want to cover today. So a little bit of the progress so far on the design work. This is kind of month by month through phase 2. We've got the light blue, dark blue, and gray are kind of the high, medium, and low range of what was expected to be, where they were expected to be at any given time. And then the black line is where they actually are, right there, a little bit below the midline, but right there in the pocket of where they should be. So design's progressing pretty much as expected, in other words. One interesting fact, just as a note, with over 70,000 yards of concrete in the project, that's enough to cover 13 football fields, quite a few football fields, 3 feet deep. So it's a lot of concrete. It's a big project. The schedule going forward, they're, again, pretty much right on schedule, going right on through the rest of it. And then on the design effort, so with that being right on schedule, where they're at. So this map of the site itself, it's color-coded basically by what firm's the main firm responsible for that design work. And then we have like the percentages of completion. So the filter building, this big rectangle here, and these solids contact clarifiers, the big circles, those are about 97% complete. They're moving forward really quickly. They're pretty well done. Chlorine contact, this is our disinfection train, and our finished water pumping, about 85% complete. And then you can see different areas all across the site and their percentages. This is our generators and electrical, our clear wells, so our finished water storage, an operations building. This is our headworks, where we bring the raw water in and combine it and control the flow going into the clarifiers. Our admin lab building, chemical storage, a maintenance building. This is all solids handling, so we're about a little over 40% basically in solids handling. This is our disinfection chemicals, a stormwater pump station, And these numbers up here refer to general site work. So it's a lot of the piping and electrical that combines these different areas. They're about 50% complete. And then off-site work. So this is work mostly down at by Hess Reservoir and other work that's not directly on the plant site.
And Bill, this is design, right? Not construction.
And this is just design. Yeah, this is the design portion. So with the design, going with this project, you hear a lot about BIM, and this is basically some images from the BIM model. The upper image is a general site view that shows you with the piping and conduits and various underground facilities and the buildings themselves. This lower image is kind of what it looks like when you shade the ground. So basically when you shade the ground, this is looking from across the street at the zoo. Basically if you were over top of the zoo looking across the site. So there's that filter building, the solids contact clarifiers, the admin building off to the side. This is the sand pit pond that's on the site. So looking across there. This is another view of the filter building, but this is specifically at the filter building. So you can shade the ground and see basically what's coming out at the ground level, or you can turn the ground off in the BIM and show everything underground. One thing kind of noted on here, there's 2 concrete pads on each corner of this filter building. When you're out the site today and you see the big tower cranes, that's where they're at. Those are the 2 concrete pads that those tower cranes are sitting on. So they're right there on basically on each corner, opposite corners of that filter building, which is really the biggest building on site.
Okay, what's the height of that filter building?
From ground, 35 feet.
35?
I think. And then we also, an earlier version of what the admin lab building, we'll get a little bit more into the admin lab here later, but this is kind of like one of the draft models looked like in BIM of that admin lab building. So then we get, that's with the design part, so we get a little bit about the construction. So February 2020, this is what the site looked like before we started. Basically, various species of trees spread out all across the site, a little bit of a storage area, and then you can always see the sand pit pond in the middle. So then in March of 2020, started with work on the site and started with the grubbing, basically removing all the trees and brush, and getting the site cleared and prepped for construction. A big part of this was stockpiling the trees that are removed and having those ground up into a biomass that the firm out in Colwich uses in their work. In this, you can see, well, there's the large area where they were stockpiling. You can see the Cox machine facility there, and you can see the self-storage further over to the side. Self-storage is what we ultimately purchased. This was actually before we even had purchased it yet. You can see the track hose and skid steers that they had at the time. Railroad tracks that are along the side of the site, basically railroad tracks separating the site from the Zoo Boulevard. As they pan around again, you can see the sand pit in the back. The sand pit's usually a pretty good way to orient on the site. And then looking back towards the north, and you can see the housing areas over to the north. So then after the site was all finally cleared, and it didn't sit completely idle, it was idle for a little while, but it wasn't very long until it started setting up the construction trailers and the area up here along 21st Street that had to be prepped before they could get going with people on site. And then came October, and the windy groundbreaking. Had a groundbreaking ceremony where we had people from EPA, KDHE, and other people from the city, as well as council members. And then the thing that really a lot of people, at least West Siders, started taking note of something going on was when the tower cranes started going up. So in January, tower cranes started going up, and the people that hadn't heard of the project yet had heard of the project by then. So February, we had the cold snap, kind of unusual, not completely unheard of in Kansas, but it was an unusually bitter cold snap there for a couple of weeks. But Wichita Water Partners did what they could to keep working right on through it. And then a more recent drone video of the site. So now we have a pretty good sized construction set of construction trailers on site, parking lot, which will probably grow even more further over for the employees that'll be working. Of course, you can see the tower cranes, and this is that lower level of the filter building. So this is underneath the filter basins and the filter pipe gallery. So this is at the very bottom part of the building. Got most of the slab on grade, that's what the SOG stands for, slab on grade. Got most of the slab on grade in on the bottom of the filter building, ready to start pouring walls. So you see scaffolding up where they're starting to set up the rebar and formwork for vertical concrete. In the middle, you'll see a depressed area. Basically, that's where some pipes go through, sump pits, and basically what is the lowest level on the site is down there in that area in the middle of the filter building. Prepping for some pipes that ultimately will end up being concrete encased. And this is the recar basin. This is a rectangular area that sticks off on one side of the building. Water comes into it before going into the filters. There's that lower area where some large pipes will be going through. And after the excavator, we're going to go back up to the north. So they have a stormwater pollution prevention plan area for water collection, so that they don't have runoff going straight into the sand pit, into the pond. Then we go to the north. So now the self-storage has all been taken down except for one row of buildings that they're using as some temporary storage, but all the other buildings on that side are gone now. So, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ron Coker to talk about a couple other things that Wichita Water Partners do.
Is it okay to have the mask off up here speaking or no?
Yeah, you're far
Yes.
enough away.
I think you'll hear me a little bit better. So I know we've talked about these things before, but just as a kind of a recap of the first year, some of the other things going on outside of the design and construction that Bill talked about. This is our Wichita Entrepreneur and Innovation Series that occurred in the fall from August till November, 4 different virtual sessions. Wish it could have been in person. The next one we do will be in 2022. And we'll hopefully have that be in person. It's just I think you get a lot better learning environment in person. So here were the professors that participated. Obviously, Dr. Fred, you all have met before. Anthony Price and Ramon Perlata, I think is how you pronounce that, were 2 entrepreneurs part of the series. And then Steve Rogers, retired professor from Harvard, and Gerald Janes, retired professor from Yale. So we had about a little over 70 participants in the class. Everybody ranked it very high. Again, this was not targeted just at design and construction firms here in Wichita. This was any minority business that wanted to participate in the class. And the theory or the concept here is the stronger the minority business community in Wichita becomes as a whole, the better off the community will be in being able to grow and develop all aspects of the community. Bill? Page down. Second initiative that's going on, it's as we speak, is our apprenticeship program with WSU Tech. We're offering 5 apprenticeship scholarships this year through WSU Tech. And again, this is a 2-year apprentice program. They go to school for the first year of that 1 week a month, and then they're working from day 1. So they have a job on day 1. They work the other 3 weeks of the month, and then all of year 2. There's about a $10,000 cost. That's what we're providing the scholarship for, is to cover the educational cost. And then our partners are making the commitment to hire and hiring the employees. So out of those 5, we have 3 committed thus far. Donlinger, CAS, and Wildcat, I believe, have all identified their apprentices. And Donlinger is actually looking at a second one as well. And I believe tomorrow, Donlinger is part of your announcement on Infrastructure Week, because they were the first to graduate somebody out of that program. So I think even that graduate will be there tomorrow as well. So we're going to work towards, we've extended the deadline until August. We're going to work towards trying to fill that. I will tell you that WSU Tech has taken it upon themselves to try and grow that program even more. So they're out for grant funding right now, which would double the funding possibilities, or double the number of scholarships that could be provided using our funding as a match. This is the first of 20 such scholarships. We do have one other scholarship that we provided that's a little different. This employee's been hired by Decker, who is one of our electrical subcontractors. And the young lady is, she's going to WSU Tech for general studies right now, and then she wants to go on to get her construction management degree. So we're treating that as a scholarship opportunity as well, and providing that funding for the WSU Tech portion of her education since she's out working on the job site. For everybody's information, as part of the steering committee, for these final 2 slots and for anything that becomes a match, we don't care if they're part of the Northwest Water Facility or not. We're just trying to increase the opportunity for diverse candidates to enter the construction workforce. So if you know a contractor that you think might be interested, and the key is contractor has to hire the candidate on day 1. So there's an interview process, and we have several applicants that we think would be good candidates. Let me know and we'll make sure we do that. We have to have 5 to make the class make. So we've got 2 more to find still. And then the final ancillary thing is the looking at the local spend and the emerging disadvantaged business spend for the project to date. So these numbers were through March, I believe, not quite to the end of March. Local, non-locals on the left, majority, and then EBE and DBE is on the right. We have 2 categories on the emerging businesses. One is certified businesses and one are qualified business. So the difference is certified business would be certified either as an EBE in your program, or an MBE or a WBE or a DBE in the state of Kansas's certification process. Or if they're qualified, we believe they would be certifiable, right, or certified if they chose to go through the certification process. So we've done enough look to know that they would, they have the basic parameters to qualify for that. So big takeaway here, our goals are 85 for local and 7 for EBE, DBE. The big takeaway here is it's very early in the project. So a lot of this spend is either design. Remember, we have HDR, who's an out-of-town designer, doing a lot of that design work. So that's what's really skewing the numbers on the first piece of that. And then a lot of the rest of it that's outside of design is material contracts. So a lot of those really aren't, they're not spent out yet, right? We've put a dollar value in there to say we might spend this much, but we've not spent it out yet. So I'm not worried about either one of those numbers. I think we're well on our way to success on both the local and the EBE, DBE parameters. All right, any questions, let me know and I'll come back at the end.
Well, I guess I'll take a pause. I mean, if there's any questions about anything you've heard so far, I mean, more than happy to address anything. Well, with that, so we get into some of our questions, some of the other elements that we're bringing to you today. So the admin lab building. So orientation here. So Zoo Boulevard is basically down here at the bottom of the page where it starts to curve into 21st Street. 21st Street's right here at this angle. And this is the intersection where Hoover comes up. It starts at an angle and then turns to go straight north. What we had heard from the steering committee previously was we asked a few questions about the siting of this building. We heard a preference for it to be parallel to the road here in this area, if we could move the meeting room inside it to look out towards the site. And we were able to do that. So we do have it oriented parallel to this road. We have some limitations. This smaller drawing down here in the corner kind of gives a reason for why it ended up where it did. We've got some pretty significant pipelines, obviously, some electrical conduit banks and other things. That's part of how it ended up where it's sitting there today. Kind of want to check, make sure we got all that part of it right from the steering committee's perspective as far as the orientation and siting of that building. Another part of that, and kind of roll into a second part, is parking. We kind of heard the possibility that there may be a desire to not have any parking in front of the building to make the building more visible from Zoo Boulevard and 21st Street. So there's, right now we're showing some diagonal parking, some limited diagonal parking in front of the building. We could reduce that to like a drop-off lane or not have any parking at all. Kind of looking for some input from the steering committee on that.
How many parking spaces total do you have on that site?
I'm going to look to Dave, or you have any idea off the top?
Not off the top of my head, I will say it's per code based on the square footage of the facility. I can't give you the exact number. I can check that.
Who's all parking in that lot on a regular basis?
On a regular, everyday basis, we've got our lab people and a few admin, the division manager and some supervisors and our lab people. It's
But none of the technicians that are working back in the field operations?
no.
So it's just admin building parking?
Yes.
Is it two?
And the techs that are working at the site itself, the operators and what have you. So the people that are working on the water plant, they would be parking there, together with some capacity for the public because of the conference rooms that'll be set up in there. But they won't be regular parking. Sorry, could you even understand what I muffled to you?
I guess my question is it too much parking? Do we have too much required there for, I know we have code requirements, but are we overbuilding parking?
Based on the fact that this could potentially be public space, you certainly want to take that into consideration. So that conference room could potentially be used for public space.
Right.
Code and considering public space, maybe not.
For an everyday basis, we won't use anywhere near that number of parking spaces, but it's there for that meeting room and facilities that are included.
Council member, are you wondering if you take away the diagonal parking, are we still okay and make it more?
No, I'm just actually wondering how much parking we actually need versus by code, right? So I understand the conference room requirements and you have to have enough parking for that occasional use, but even is that too much?
We're talking about the conference room capacity is what now,
80.
so can't count from here, but if the conference room is being used during the day and you have staff there at full capacity, you're going to have a pretty busy parking lot.
Okay.
Yeah, think about the occasional use.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I just didn't want to overbuild it. So I have no issue with the limited diagonal parking out front. I mean, I guess I just didn't want a sea of parking in front of the building. This helps that by just having that limited front door parking. I mean, everybody wants front door parking. But
Those are handicap spots.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so that totally makes
Several.
sense. I just didn't want a sea of parking out front.
Okay.
And I could be alone. I don't know if anybody else has any opinion on that.
Any other discussion on that? I don't know, online I can't see, so. So hearing none, we'll go with that direction. The other thing on this slide that we want to ask about is a fencing question. It's kind of an aesthetic question. It's a fencing and aesthetic question. So we have security fencing. So we've kind of got two general scenarios in these two drawings over here to the right. One where we keep the building basically detached from the security fencing, and everything has to go through the double gate to get into the site. So we've got a security fence that's coming along parallel to the railroad tracks. It comes up. We've got two fences side by side, and then the fence continues on around the site. So we have a double gate basically to enter through to get into the site, and we keep that completely detached. The other scenario is to just continue that fencing on over to the corner of the building and continue the fencing around to the back side of the building. A couple of the reasons why we're bringing this to you, beyond just to get your input, is with this version, with this meeting room looking out this direction, you'd be looking through two fences to see out onto the site. Whereas here, you only have to look through one fence to see onto the site, but you have an aesthetic of a fence coming up to the corner of the building to create that security point. Employees then too, could come out of the back door of this building and be able to go into the site. Here, whether they have double gates or we come up with something different, I'm not sure. But it's kind of an aesthetics issue, but that creating two fences to look through. And these fences they're 8-foot vinyl coated chain link with 3 strands of barbed wire on top. They're a security fence. They're vinyl coated, so they look nice, but they're a security fence. So kind of wanted to see if you had any input to offer on that issue. I don't hear anybody online, so I'm not sure if we have a communication problem or not. I know I heard somebody earlier talking, so hopefully they're able to.
I would say the second one, just so you don't have to look through 2 gates out over the site. I mean, that was kind of why we wanted that room there.
Try to help increase that visibility.
Yeah.
Okay.
On that second version, on the building, are there exits from the building out that direction?
There'd be one that's basically employees only off of the backside in that direction, but nothing directly off that side of the building, no.
So no public?
No public.
Could access that to get through?
Correct.
Okay. Then, yeah, I agree. I think version 2 is a better aesthetic from being in the building. And, I mean, we want people to understand that it's secure and it's safe, and we're doing everything possible. I think that first impression of that fencing as they come in kind of helps give that security.
Yeah.
And then once you're inside, you have a better view. As long as it's no public can access those doors
Right.
to get out, then I like it better than the tunnel gates. It very looks prison-like almost.
All right. Appreciate that input.
What do you all feel from a security and safety standpoint? Which version do you feel more comfortable with?
Either one actually works from a security perspective. Because of being able to have that space separated in the building, we're really okay either way on the security aspect.
And is there still 2 moving gates in version 2?
There's still 2 gates. There's 2 gates pretty much no matter what we do for the security of it. But
Got it. Okay.
okay. So then, along with that, the admin lab building, a little bit more about the look of the building. So Wichita Water Partners has come up with some elevations of what that admin lab building looks like, with some architectural enhancements that are still within the GMP, so still within our project budget. This is black and white. I'll show you. I've got another slide here in just a minute. This is kind of the front view. I've been describing it, which this isn't, I'm not trying to put words in Wichita Water Partners' mouth, but it's kind of a wing look like they used with the Intrust Bank Arena and other things. You got this big wedge wing look across the front of the building. This is what that south end of the building, so these would be those big windows in the meeting rooms looking out towards the site. And these are some office windows back on the back part. This is looking from the north, basically, at the building. So down here is that main entrance. This is all the lab space, all through this area here. So it'd be some type of a stone brick wainscot and metal above that, with some windows. And then off the back, so this is that south end, so this is where those meeting room windows are. And this is some more office windows on the back side, basically facing towards the Cox machine. Then we have kind of a raster view of it. Not asking you to go by the colors or anything here. We'll be coming back to you later, talk about colors, but more the architectural style to make sure if you had any comments or concerns about the general architectural style of it. Again, looking at some type of a stone wainscot or brick wainscot and metal above that, with this large wing roof sticking out, concrete area under it. Got double front doors. This is a separate meeting room, so I've got another view in a minute that'll show a little bit more on the inside. But those meeting rooms looking out to the south or back around that corner, there's a separate meeting room that could be used publicly or by staff, and this would be the lobby area. So this is that main entrance, and again, this is showing that diagonal parking in the front.
Is there a reason why those windows are so small in the lab?
Well, mainly because the counter space underneath is the main reason, is to get them up above the counter space in the instruments. We've got, basically we're using every square foot of that. So we've got big U-shaped labs that have counter space and instruments all the way around, so the windows are up above that.
So they're really not designed for viewing out while you're standing there. It's just designed for light and
It's for the, yeah,
natural light stuff.
yep, for natural lighting.
Is that enough natural light? I mean, it looks like a small window.
Yes, there are some of the labs where we don't want natural light because of the instruments. So I'm just going to say yes. It varies lab to lab as you go around the building, but yeah, it's plenty for what's needed.
Okay.
So if no other comments on that, if you're okay with that, we'll like I said, proceed down this road. If you have any other comments later, I mean, feel free to let us know, and people online too, let us know. Otherwise, this is the route Wichita Water Partners is proceeding with, and again, we'll be coming back to you with more about some of the textures and colors and those things later. So then the other thing we want to make sure we talk to you about today is an aesthetics project. So back in 2019, we met with the Design Council and with this steering committee. Out of those meetings, we came with 4 particular elements to an aesthetics project. Some wrought iron fencing with some type of an artistic element to it along Zoo Boulevard, between Zoo Boulevard and railroad tracks. Some aesthetic enhancements in the admin lab building, particularly in the lobby and going into the meeting room. And the idea discussed was keeping it as interpretive, so about the water system, about something water related. There were 2 other elements that ended up not being incorporated. There was an elevated viewing area. So as you might recall, at the time, the admin lab building was supposed to be over on 21st Street in a totally different part of the site. And we had talked about a hill, some elevated ground to build a viewing area. And when we moved to this site, there's no longer room to build a hill. We looked at the possibility of an upper level, but the costs ended up being too much. So we pretty much eliminated that part of the aesthetics. And then the other was aesthetics to some elevated storage tanks. So we did have a backwash water supply was in elevated storage tanks, water towers. And we were going to do some enhancements to those, but those were eliminated in favor of pumping. So we left with the fencing and the artistic elements that are in the admin lab building for now. So in the when I say in the project, there's in the funding package for the overall project for the whole Northwest Water Treatment Plant, there's $1.5 million set up for aesthetics. This is not in the Wichita Water Partners agreement. This will have to go out with its own RFP for its own selection process, in which case the steering committee would be involved, and we'll have a whole separate group. Wichita Water Partners might propose on it, I don't know, but it'll have its own process and its own selection. We did get earlier direction from the design council to make sure that we include an artist on the site, on the team that's selected for this aesthetics project. And we did talk to the design council about those other elements being eliminated. So in the admin lab building, some other elements that have been discussed and we were able to keep were in the lobby, we have a view of a lab and a view of an operator's console. So a scaled down version of what the operator's control room looks like. I want to make sure you're aware of a couple of things. So this facility, this admin lab building, not staffed outside of regular hours as needed by the water utility. I mean, there'd have to be something else arranged for things outside of regular business hours. And there's no lobby staffing planned. We don't have that currently at our water treatment plant, so we haven't necessarily planned it here, but we've made some areas where we could provide something, but that's not what's planned today. The other part I want to make sure everybody's aware of is we have to wait for Wichita Water Partners to finish the building before we have this aesthetics project go in and do anything. So we need to have their building cleared, their construction cleared and approved, and it already needs to happen 1 year in advance of the rest of the site so that we can get the lab certified. So our lab staff will have to go out there and get that new lab certified. And that's the reason the admin lab building gets finished a year before the rest of the site. So this is a look down into that admin lab building. And up front, you can see the lobby area. So here's those double doors was showing. This is that wall of windows by the double doors with a conference room. And then here's the two groups of windows with the meeting rooms that look out towards the site. So generally speaking, somebody could come in through the front doors into a lobby area. This is that window into a lab, into a bacteriology lab. And then we have a window here into a operator's control room. For the water utility, this operator's control room is a training space, so it's to train operators or refresh training, and also as a backup. So if something completely drastic happened at our operator's building, then they could use this potentially as a backup. Do have a secure door. That's the limit that direction for anybody coming in without a card swipe. Again, this conference room could be used public, and then the meeting rooms can be used public. This is a storage space, bathrooms, and then that's pretty much the limit in this direction. At that point, we have a door that again would be a secure door into what for staff is a kitchen break room, but could have access for people depending on what's going on. And then we also have a secure door back into the office area. So this is kind of our administration offices, printer rooms, that type of stuff, and then the lab's all up off the site. So this is kind of where we're looking at for this interior aesthetics work or artistic work is in through this lobby, through this hall, through these hallways, and then maybe something in these meeting rooms. It's not completely set in stone. Again, that'll all be part of that process.
Can that be one large meeting room? Is that middle wall collapsible?
I'm sorry, yeah, that's a collapsible wall. One of those that fold back and it folds back into this little space. Yeah, so it can be one big room.
Okay.
So I guess in general, is there any questions or any concerns or any particular direction you want to provide in us going forward on this aesthetics project, or?
Hey, Bill, this is Chris. I just am curious on the two windows, the one that looks into the lab and the one that looks into the operator's room. Do those have shutters or some security thing that can be shut if you want to shut them?
I'm sure we could have something like that on the inside, or I'm sure we would have something like that on the inside of the room, yes.
Okay, thank you.
One thing I did want to bring up that Bill did mention, just so that it doesn't get lost, is with this configuration, there won't be any staff manning the area while it's in use, and so we'd have to get like someone knock on a door or get on the intercom or something. It won't be that you have like a lobby counter that you can walk up to and say, hey, we need this, or this isn't working, or whatever. There wouldn't be any city staff there in person available to this area. If that's a consideration, then we would need to look at some other alternative that puts a counter that looks out over the lobby, for example, so that if somebody needed to get to somebody, they could walk up to the counter that faces the lobby and talk to a real person. Have you looked at that, Bill, as some options?
So we looked at some options. Pretty much, yes, we have looked at some options. It would kind of affect the view into one of these rooms, but yeah, we've looked at some options for a space in this area for a person to be, for a desk, a counter in this area, or possibly inside this room using that window as a pass-through. We've looked at some options for that,
But it wouldn't be unlocked anyway. Like if there was a tour or something, we'd have a staff member at that point that would guide folks into that back room, right?
And then once, yes, sir. Then once they were there, they would return back to their offices, which is behind a door that the public can't get to, and there wouldn't be any city staff there available while they were there in the conference room. So, this is one way to do it, but we wanted to make sure we raised the point in case y'all had some concerns about that. If you want to have access to a city or to a actual person from that public area, we'd have to do something like a counter that someone sits behind that faces into the lobby, for example.
so we could have that space for somebody to be at, or assign somebody to be with that group the whole time they're there. It's some different options. It's just we don't have that staffing today, so.
I think it's probably easier just to assign somebody instead of creating a new position if they're not busy, they'd just be sitting there.
Well, instead of sitting in their office and doing their work, they would be sitting at the counter and doing their work. That would become their office.
Right.
So their office would basically have a public access element to it that in this configuration it doesn't presently have. And if that's okay, we can do it just like that. But if the steering committee has a concern about if it's important that somebody who's in the public using that public area has personal access to a person, we'd have to do something a little different than what this configuration here shows. Like have somebody's work area that they work at a counter that faces into the lobby, for example. So they'd still be busy, they'd still be doing their work, but they would be available, whereas once they're behind the locked door in those office areas back there, they wouldn't be available, if that makes sense.
While you're pondering on that, I will mention one other thing I didn't mention. This space here was kind of left open so that if they were having a meeting room where they were trying to serve food from the outside or something, there was some space there too. So I failed to mention that as I was going through that. And again, this is what, these doors here and here, that's what creates that secure area back when we were talking about the fencing, where this back here is employees only, basically. So.
Does anyone remember the occupancy on the 2 large meeting rooms? Looks like it's just set up for maybe
This,
40 in each side.
it's 80, exactly right. You're exactly right.
And that will also be used for training and operations by the facility, correct? Not
Yes.
just public space, it'll be used by our staff.
It'll be used by our staff for meetings and training, yes.
And you need the conference room as well.
They will probably need that bigger conference room at times. We have a smaller conference room back inside the secure area, but at times they will probably use that as well.
So you see enough of an overlap where you would need the large conference room as well as the meeting space at the same time. I guess what I'm asking is, if you got a room that you can subdivide into 40, why do you also need a conference room for 12 or whatever that is? Unless you see enough times where you're overlapping where there could be you being used all 3 spaces.
I don't know how much overlap there would be, but that's what would accommodate that overlap. Haven't got a good
Right.
sense of how often it would be, though. Would it be very infrequent? But that is
Yeah.
accomplished with that room there.
I don't think it's highly frequent, but I mean, it would allow, basically, if there was training going on and needing a conference room, a larger conference room. So, yeah, I can't really speak to how often that is.
But I love the conference room view out and that presence with the windows there and so forth. I mean, nobody likes the conference room stuck in the middle of a building. You just feel like you're in a closet. But it just seems like we've got a lot of meeting space where I don't know that we're going to need that much meeting space all at the same time. But you guys operate it, not me, so. I guess I don't see windows on that. Yeah, that's blue paint. Okay, never mind. Okay.
So I'm sorry, I'm asking, I mean, are you thinking other uses for this space?
I'm just wondering, right? It just
Okay.
seems like a lot of meeting room space that I don't know that justifies all that square footage if there's not enough frequent use where there's all 4 rooms being at the same time or that demand.
Right.
But you have to tell me. I mean, certainly you want the large room space so that you can do your training and operations and everything, but it just seems like a lot of space that's going to be dead a lot of time.
So perhaps the lobby concept that we were talking about, where there was a person that was actually accessible by the public, maybe use that area? Is that
Space.
a possibility?
Again, I hate taking the windows, though. I'm not an architect, so. Again, it's just playing with the idea right now.
So Bill, the smaller conference room, would that be a place where a person could work with a counter, pass-through counter?
They could, yeah. They wouldn't have the view of the front door, but I mean, it would make them available, yes.
So that if you're in there and you run into some kind of a technical problem, you're looking around for somebody and there's nobody there, whereas there would be a counter there that could make somebody actually available in person, you're right, it wouldn't necessarily see the lobby. We could use a CCTV.
Right.
I mean, so these days, that's, how it's done to buzz somebody in, for example.
There's going to be cameras and card readers on it anyway, so yes,
Yep.
obviously, yes.
What's the area of that lobby size? Anybody know the approximate?
The lobby size here, I was trying to remember now. I know that's about 6 feet, so it's probably 8 by 12 maybe.
Okay. And the large conference room there?
Yeah. I'd be guessing. Whatever I say, it'd be a guess. It'd take me a while to pull it up, but we can get that information for you. I mean, we can definitely get you footages.
I just worry that if you got a tight lobby space and then we start trying to introduce aesthetics into it, it's going to feel real tight and real small and not really give us the aesthetic vibe that we're hoping for. That is, this is a substantial project, an investment in our community, and we got to confine to a postage size. Here's our welcome, here's our story, and oh yeah, you're tight. So
council member, is one possibility that be eliminated altogether and make the lobby area bigger and less crowded?
again, I don't want to play architect. I'm reminded I shouldn't play road engineer all the time. So, but again, that window wall is pretty compelling, and it's a great welcome. And so, yeah, it's an opportunity to really wow people. It feels like the storage there on the corner is a wasted opportunity for maybe that to be the conference room, and use your storage where the small conference room is, treeing off of that and then making it more internal there.
And
But I
really,
don't know what you're storing. Is it just chairs for the big, large meeting rooms?
It's chairs, tables, yeah, mostly for supplies for the meeting room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and really, it's a matter of balancing functionality and aesthetics, and so it's not as though you're suggesting things that are in some way out of bounds. As long as we can run it past our staff and make sure that functionally we're still covered, I mean, these are the kinds of suggestions that I think could help with the aesthetics piece of it. After all, that's what we're trying to do here, right?
And that may be, I mean, if I'm hearing kind of the direction correctly, and correct me however, but I mean, keeping those windows and making some more additional interpretive space and getting a spot where a staff member could be full or part-time, I mean, that could still be accomplished, I believe, with those windows there.
Right. And again, you can, if you slide your conference room into that storage space, that becomes a secure, safer, from public view conference room for internal staff meetings as well, but then you've still got your windows off the community meeting rooms to make it open and inviting. So.
Can you pass those suggestions on, Bill?
We'll work on those. Yeah, we'll work on that.
So aesthetically, I was thinking in the lobby, and this could be out there, but some form of water element to be there. Maybe that's part of the RFP, and maybe some, I don't know, photos of Wichitans in water somewhere, somehow.
Wichitans in water?
What would be really cool, and I don't know if that could work there, but to show what we're actually doing. So something that shows water that comes in and how it looks when it goes out.
Hopefully that's the kind of stuff, I mean, from a staff perspective, that's the kind of stuff we would hope the artist would include, yeah. It'd be stuff about what we're doing, but. Okay, we'll run with that part of it on the admin lab building. The other part was the fence. So Along Zoo Boulevard, so zoo's off to the side, our sites here, admin lab buildings up here. There's an existing fence between the railroad tracks and Zoo Boulevard that comes out and ends here at Windmill. What has been direction so far is to extend that fence on out to the location where a new bike path will be crossing the railroad tracks here. So we would just come out and end at that bike path. A few things about that. So we kind of did a base cost for what just a wrought iron fence extension would be, and then we'd be adding those artistic elements to it. So you're aware, the right-of-way here, the Zoo Boulevard right-of-way is actually Sedgwick County's authority, and they're going to have us do a maintenance agreement so that we're maintaining this fence. There was some concerns expressed about the mowing and trash with this fence. Currently, the zoo staff mows all the way up to the railroad ballast, all the way up to the rock. With the fence, they would continue to mow to the fence, but they couldn't mow on the backside of the fence because it'd be on railroad right-of-way. So, how well the railroad maintains their side of the fence is something really beyond our control, I guess. So what we're looking at is this is that existing fence looking back towards the southeast. This is what that existing fence looks like. It's all basically animal related today as you go into town. And then looking the other way, looking northwest, there's where that fence ends today, and this is where we would be extending it.
And it's important to note that this is an artistic feature only. This fence doesn't really provide security. On the other side of the railroad tracks will be that 8-foot-high vinyl-coated chain link fence with the barbed wire on the top. That's what's going to really provide the security. This is a decorative element on the other side of the tracks only.
Was this more of a concern from the design council?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it was, I was trying to remember exactly where it originated from, and I believe it did originate from the design council, was the idea of extending this with the artistic elements on it.
And remind me, I think we took out quite a few trees, obviously, on our side. Is there a tree replacement plan as part of landscaping finish out on our side?
We do have some trees going back in on the site, not in the same locations because of our security fence, but we do have some trees going back in on the site.
I think you bring up good points with the maintenance agreement and the trash. And I mean, I drive that road every day, and it can become quite littered. And again, it's an additional cost for us. I think that if the design council saw the security fencing on our side of the track, because there's quite a good elevation change through there between the railroad. It's hard to see past, I mean, if you're on the road, it's 6 feet tall. So it's hard to even see past that. But if the design council saw our security fencing and then a proposed landscape plan about how those trees would help replace some of that canopy, that might be enough to help them overcome their original goals, and then along with these other considerations.
Not to detract from that, I do want to just make sure I'm clear though. So the trees that we would do, they would be inside that security fence. Okay.
I get that, yeah.
Okay.
But at least it's a replacement for what we took out, because that was, I know they weren't great trees, but
Right.
Having some idea of what's going to be replaced there is better than just bare open space, especially if there's the security fencing too. Do you have anything? Do you have anything on it?
No, I think you covered.
So if there's nothing else on that, that's pretty much the end. Looking forward, we do expect to need to come to the steering committee some more. Again, architectural and aesthetics issues will probably be coming a few times over the next year. Then we've got a city council workshop slightly different presentation, a little bit of overlap, but different presentation at the City Council workshop next Tuesday, and not tomorrow, Tuesday, next Tuesday. And then Design Council, we're going back to Design Council with some of the same information and what we've heard from the steering committee today on June 7th. And with that, any questions or anything else you want to cover?
So what will be different at the workshop from today?
So we get a little bit more detail on some elements of what the project has done to date and on some of the financing issues that we've went through. A little bit more in depth on some of the other involvement with the community, and not so much on making some decisions on an admin lab building. So.
Okay. So you'll talk about some of the things we talked about today as part of that workshop, or?
There'll be a few elements of overlap, but.
Okay.
As far as the aesthetics piece, we'll just let them know that we've been talking to you all about the aesthetics and that we are also working with the Design Council.
Okay. I just didn't know if you wanted us to share some of these layout issues with our fellow council members before the workshop and let them know kind of what we're thinking if we're going to drill down that far during the workshop, like what we just talked about with the lobby and the meeting room space.
Yeah, that won't be so much the focus of the workshop. It'll be really more kind of an update on the project, seeing as how we're past a year past it.
Okay.
That kind of detail we're really looking for.
So let you work this through before we can certainly share this with them and
Yes.
tell them some of our concerns and see if they have any ideas, but knowing that it's still a work in progress and it's not going to be at the workshop.
Yes, sir.
Gotcha. Okay.
Will you have any, to Councilmember Fry's suggestion by Design Council, what that might look like with the security fence and the new trees planted, just to have a visual of what that'll look like?
We will work with Wichita Water Partners on that.
I think that's important
Yeah.
for them to be able to make a recommendation to show them something.
Yeah, I think that would help, just having that visual of what the tree replacement looks like, and they're still, blocking some of what they might see as unsightly, but
Okay.
having that security fence in the trees, I think is good, and it'd be good for us to see it as well.
And that's really all staff has. I don't know if there's anybody online with any other comments or questions? Then I guess we're finished. We're adjourned.